I've had a pretty good run with Silent Hill. I've only played 1 through 4, which are generally regarded as the only good entries, the only ones that are actually worth playing. So I played those, I ended it there, I had an absolutely good time. I may spoil my experience with Silent Hill, unfortunately, if I play the new one, the Silent Hill 2 Remake, because everything about it, especially with the updates we've gotten over the last couple of days, it's not looking good. It's looking a little bit grim. Now, I've always been skeptical of a Silent Hill 2 remake because the original is fantastic. It's probably the best horror game I've ever played. It's got a great story. The presentation is excellent. Gameplay, a little bit middling. It's not really selling it, but it's either here or there because everything else is incredible about Silent Hill 2 if you're there for the story, the immersion, and everything like that. To remake it, it's really tricky because when you've got an excellent game like that, to try and get, say, a new team to work on it, which is what is happening. Konami, the publisher, they brought a new team in, no one who was involved in the original, and they're going to remake it from the ground up with the modern graphics and everything. There's just so much that you can get wrong, all of those little nuances, like the voice acting of the original. On paper, it sounds or looks amateurish, but in translation, when you play the game, it sort of adds to the mystery. Everything feels not quite right, and sometimes it feels like genius by accident, almost. Like they didn't mean to do that, but it all just comes together and makes for an amazing game. Even the graphics, for the time they were great. If you try and update those, you may kind of spoil some of those subtleties that are kind of there. What I will say is the Silent Hill 2 trailers we were getting maybe 12 months ago, I didn't think that they were that bad. I still have had low expectations for the remake, but nothing I'd seen had totally spoiled it. That changed around 24 hours ago, because Bloober Team, the team who Konami have hired to work on this, they've already shown us some very questionable decisions, especially around the character models. They've made some drastic changes, and already I'm being pulled out of the Silent Hill 2 story. And what I kind of see is the world of Silent Hill 2. It's just not looking that great, and I've never really had any faith in Bloober Team. They're the studio behind this. They're an incompetent studio. They made Layers of Fear, which to me is the worst horror game I've ever played. I'm sure there's much worse. I've always tried to only play ones that people sort of recommend. I haven't gone out of my way to play terrible ones, but from the ones that have had at least a positive reception, Layers of Fear is the worst one I've ever touched. It felt try-hard, it felt like a team who just didn't really know what they were doing, they tried to be clever when they weren't. Nothing really hit home for me. Story was boring, there were no real scares, the gameplay was non-existent. Couldn't get into it, and they've made other games which I've avoided. I've heard The Medium is okay, it's a bit like Silent Hill, but it falls short. I just don't have a lot of faith in them. So what they've done is, in the latest reveal of Silent Hill 2, they've started to show more of these character models. And the one that has stuck out to people as just really not suiting the game in any way, shape, or form, it just does not look good, is Angela's character model. In case you aren't familiar with the character, Angela is one of the first other characters you encounter in Silent Hill 2. You find her in a graveyard, and there's just something creepy about the whole interaction. Something isn't quite right. She's clearly disturbed in some way, and you can already feel that Silent Hill is a weird place. It's a really nice opening interaction. Now, on the right here is Angela from the PS2, from the original game, and she actually looks really good for something that was released 20 plus years ago. And what I will say is, apparently she was only meant to be 19 in the original. She clearly looks a bit older here, but there is a story reason for that. Without kind of spoiling it, basically, she hasn't had a good life. She's had some very bad experiences happen to her, and it kind of makes sense that has aged her in appearance. But if we look here on the left, this is Bloober Team's Angela. And all I can really say is, just seeing her, it kind of pulls me out of the experience a little bit. It doesn't feel the same. She looks like someone who's wandered into a cemetery by mistake, and now she needs you to ring up her mum and have her taken home. Some people might look at this and go, who really cares? Yeah, she looks a little bit different, but whatever. The problem to me is Bloober Team are remaking Silent Hill 2. And their goal should be to stick to as much the same game as possible, just update the visuals, maybe improve the gameplay if you want to, given it was kind of middling in the original, but as I said, I'm not bothered by that. James, the main character, he's not like a Resident Evil hero. He shouldn't be a competent fighter, so it's alright if he doesn't really play like a warrior. He's a little bit clumsy. I think that's really fine, but if you've got to improve anything, purely graphics, maybe gameplay, but nothing else. By changing Angela, the character, in such a way where she looks way younger and doesn't feel like the same character. And even if you say, oh, but she was meant to look younger, it was a mistake, I don't really care, because the Silent Hill 2 that I grew up with, this is how she looked on the right. So that's my experience with Angela. And to try and change that just makes me feel like you don't want to tell the exact same story. You want to put your own spin on it. And I'm not interested in Bloober's spin. They've shown themselves to be morons in a lot of cases. I just want them to adapt the existing material, because that's the only safe option, because their original work is not very good. Unfortunately, that's not really the end of the controversy, because what I've said so far, that might be the fair way to look at things without looking any deeper, but it gets a little bit more nefarious, because Bloober Team are working with this company, Hit Detection, making games better for everyone. And Hit Detection is a video game consulting firm with a global presence. Consulting firm. Where have we heard that before? It sounds a little bit similar to Sweet Baby Inc. Oh, this could only mean great things. So if we have a look, one of their services is Sensitive Issues Assessment. Our team assesses the risk factors for depictions of characters from unrepresented groups, themes, and potential community reactions. Well, I guess things could have been worse. Angela could have had a gender change or something like that. I don't think they've quite gone that far. But when you see this, and you know that they're working with, say, this Hit Detection group, suddenly I get all sorts of ideas. I can't simply think, oh, they've just changed Angela and made her look a little bit weirder, a little bit worse, purely because this is their interpretation of the character. I start to actually think, hang on a minute, is ideology at play here? Is the reason that Angela looks like this because some heroes have decided if there's too many conventionally attractive women in the game, then that's sexist and the male gaze needs to be stopped at all costs? That's my concern here, that if that's the priority that we have when remaking Silent Hill 2, any benefit of the doubt I may have had for this game has gone completely out the window at that point. And sadly, we've just seen this too many times, where you get these idiots who come in and they decide they're going to put their own spin on existing media, and oh, we need to gender swap this, we need to do that, all the women are too attractive. When that starts, it just destroys it. And I don't know for sure that that's happening with Silent Hill 2. Maybe this Hit Detection, maybe they did nothing of the sort, but there's been too many times where it's been true that these companies hire a consultancy who comes in and ruin the game, basically, because priorities shift. Instead of just making the most faithful recreation, the best version of Silent Hill 2 that you can, instead it's about, oh, we need to insert a certain worldview. We need to re-educate toxic gamers. We need to make sure that this Silent Hill makes sense for a modern audience. And I don't know if that's actually happening, but this is really the short of it. Basically, a company is remaking Silent Hill 2. They're known to be not very good. Many people don't have a lot of faith. They come in and then they start meddling with it. All you need to do is just make it faithful. Look at Angela here on the top right. She looks good, just recreate that. It's easily doable. They did this 22 or something years ago. Just make something similar to that. If you do that, there's no controversy, everyone's happy. When you go changing it, and then we hear that you're working with a Sweet Baby Inc. company of some sort, everyone's going to assume the worst. And they're right in thinking so, because gamers have been burned so many times where maybe an IP that used to be great, we were looking forward to it, it gets ruined, whether it's in movies, TV, or games. It's happened a million times. So if you aren't doing anything nefarious, just make them look like the originals. It's not hard. Anyone who claims that trying to make the characters look like the original is sexist or racist or whatever is just a crazy person not worth listening to. They were never going to buy the game anyway. It's all you gotta do. Make them look like the original. Everyone is happy. If you're refusing to do that, well, I don't know what to tell you. People are just going to assume you have bad intentions. And you probably do, because I've heard that this is the final Angela and they're definitely not going to change it. So it sounds like they're going in the wrong direction. Again, if you look at this in isolation, it's not the biggest deal in the world. I don't think she realistically looks that bad, but she does look worse. 20 years on, she looks worse. It's just weird. How is that possible? Is it incompetence, or is something else going on because of this hit detection group? I just don't know, but again, I am going to assume the worst. And of course, you get these people defending this, and they claim if you don't like the new Angela, well, it's the usual suspects. You're sexist, you're a phobe, or whatever. And we're here on the Purple Forum on Reset Era, you never could have guessed, and someone starts talking about people have taken her slightly less gaunt face and turned it straight up into disgusting fat phobia. And I love this one, because anytime you criticize a design like this, the straw mans come out. So in response to people criticizing this character design, here's what people say. The internet losers would literally be overcome by anxiety attacks if either of these women talked to them in real life, if Angela or whoever it might be talked to them in the real world. Well, I love where this is coming from, because this is coming from a forum, a group of people who will never miss an opportunity to tell you about their anxiety, their depression, some body issue, some mental issue that they're having. They'll constantly throw that on you, and then if you don't have 100% sympathy, if you don't agree with them that the world is to blame for all of their problems, then you're a toxic, evil person and you must be purged. This is that sort of community. So according to them, all of their issues are totally justified. But now to insult anyone who has an issue with one of the greatest games of all time in Silent Hill 2, for them to change character models and ruin it to an extent, if you raise that as an issue, apparently that's your problem, and the reason is, oh, you've just got too much anxiety, you can't even speak to women in the real world. I find that very interesting who that comes from. Totally not hypocritical at all. And this continues. Someone says, it's like we're doing the Alloy thing all over again. Her face is too fat, and all of their sources are the V-shaped anime girls. And of course, the person saying it literally has an anime girl as their profile picture. It's so predictable, because these people, they imply that if you criticize a female character model in a game, it means you've got an unrealistic view of women, it's the male gaze, it's disgusting. These are always the people most obsessed with video game women, digital women in the online world who aren't real. They are obsessed. But because of their political views, they will insult anyone who dares question, say, Angela's character model, or if they like Stellar Blade or anything like that. They'll bang on about it, but they're not consistent at all. They love virtual women. They're their favorite. It's just convenient at the moment to pretend that that's not the case. Now, the Maria one is a little bit different, I suppose. I think the character model, it's going to really depend. Because I do think that Maria in the Silent Hill 2 world, she should be a bit like that Two-Face in the Seinfeld episode, where in some lighting, she looks really good. But then in other lighting, you're sort of like, whoa, what the fuck's that? That's how I view Maria, where sometimes she looks great and she's there to help you. But then other times, you're sort of like, well, this is like a psychotic killer or something. Something's a little bit weird here. So I think that's fine. That's what you want from Maria, is for her to look a little bit strange sometimes, like she's going to strangle you or do something evil to you at some point. And I don't really get that vibe from the character model in the remake. She looks almost a bit too innocent, like she's there to tag along. She doesn't have her own agenda, but we'll see how that shapes up, I guess. I've just got to say, the overall remake, I don't think it looks that bad. Some people have questioned the graphics and said, oh, my PS3 graphics, I don't really care that much about that. Maybe it's just me, because I've never been a huge graphics person. I think the style is all right, but if they fuck up the character models, and then we find out that it was because they hired a consultancy or because of weird identity politics stuff, it's just going to ruin the entire game. It's all going to be totally soured, and I would like to see Silent Hill come back in force, and we see new entries that are actually of some sort of quality, given so many have been terrible. So it will be a shame if they ruin this, Whether something nefarious has happened or if Bloober are just incompetent and that's why the character model doesn't look good, we will find out. For now, I'm probably going to have to assume the worst, which is a bit of a shame. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers. Bye.